Whole family of Marine Life 2030 here.
For those of you that are already here, we're just going to wait one more minute before we officially start. But I'm really enjoying all these highs and welcomes. What a great way to start.
Do attendees have the rights to speak, or they can only chat? Yep. Hello, Frank. I take it you have no right to speak. So. Good. Yeah.
Okay, I think we can probably get started.
We're getting started.
Pardon? Yeah, I think we're
Sorry.
gonna get started with things. No, that's totally fine. Yes, welcome everybody this Friday afternoon to Marine Biodiversity Networking Fridays. We have a really special session today with a slight different change in the agenda. So I'm going to introduce myself first and then go over the agenda in the hopes that anybody coming in late can catch the last part. My name is Andrea Bosman. I am a Canadian living in Norway. I run North SciComm, and we translate marine science research articles into other formats, be this immersive exhibitions, movies, and children's literature. I have a PhD in deep sea jellyfish, but I am also an author. So I am very, very stoked to listen to the people speaking today because they are right up my alley. Before we jump into introducing them, the agenda, some housekeeping. Normally, the format goes, we have the presentations and then a joint Q&A, but today we decided to mix it up a bit on a Friday, keep us all on our toes. We'll have one presentation followed by a Q&A and the second presentation and the next Q&A. So please add your questions as used to before. Type them out since you're not allowed to speak here. I will first introduce, well, no, sorry, I'm not going to introduce them yet. I'm going to talk a little bit about the webinar. Today we have Onewater with us, and they are going to talk about how science, policy, and community-driven solutions can bridge the gaps in water and ocean governance. Why explaining your work to your family matters, and how communication can drive real-world change. We're also going to hear about one of the projects, We Are Oceans. We have two speakers. I think we're going to start with Christian. You're going to start first, I believe. Christian's CV is very, very long, and we do not have a full hour to go over that. But I think we are going to learn a lot from him today. He has a multidisciplinary background covering economics, biology, marine resources, water science policy, and management. Not surprisingly, he works in all of these areas. And he's the co-founder of Onewater. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but this was a lockdown baby that started less than 5 years ago and has now expanded into 4 countries. Joining Christian today, we have Veronica Relano, and she is originally from landlocked Spain, but has always had a strong connection to the ocean. Veronica has studied marine environmental sciences. She's also spent some time in France, Spain, Belgium, and New Zealand, and earned her master's degree in marine environment and resources. She went on to Germany and then pursued a PhD at the University of British Columbia in Canada, my neck of the woods, focusing on marine conservation. She is now a postdoc working in global fisheries, and she works on a project to protect 30% of European seas by 2030. She is the Oceans Program. She directs the Ocean Program at Onewater and runs the SOS We Are Oceans, UN Ocean Decade Project. So now let's start with our first presenter. Whenever you're ready, if you want to share your screen, let's start here.
Thank you, Andrea. I may say, listening to you doing the introduction, it's like listening to a podcast, you know. It's a good
I recorded
trailer.
a podcast yesterday, so
Yeah.
yeah,
You're
there
in
you
the
go.
mood. I see.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I won't be that eloquent, and I also don't have a PhD in jellyfish. But I will talk a little bit about Onewater and some of the work that we do for the next 10 minutes or so. Going to be a pretty high-level presentation, generally introducing things and then presenting a few projects. And then afterwards, as Andrea was saying, a quick Q&A. We're going to start out with some numbers here that we often use as a hook to motivate the sort of work that we do. It's unfortunate that the audience can't really interact, so I'll just talk through these and explain a little bit, because these numbers motivated the initial formation of Onewater, and they refer to certain systemic gaps that we believe we face in the world. Number one is 20 versus 98%, and that is simply the level of the share of scientific or developmental reports being published in English, which is 98%. These are mostly issues that are confined to the non-English speaking world, which is only 20% of the world. So there's this big disconnect in the work that we do in terms of what we publish, science, development as a whole, and the population that this is actually accessible to, 20% versus 98%. Compounded by that, there's a lot of paywalls that limit access to a lot of that science on top. Mentioned language, 20 versus 75% is the same thing, not necessarily for science, but for all the other publications that go out there with the topics relevant to our work. 8% is the attention span. So even if you could access the science, you probably won't process it because your attention span is too short. And 773 million is the number of people in the world that are illiterate, cannot read or write. That's not a problem that's confined to the low and middle income countries primarily. Also in the US, for example, 37 million cannot read or write. So there is a big disconnect in the work that a lot of us do. And yeah, the people that this should or could concern to some extent. When we started this lockdown baby, we basically wanted to find an outlet for the many essays that we had to write in our course in Oxford. And we soon found that we're only speaking to our own peers, and that was a little bit besides the point because everyone had the ambition to do something a little bit more meaningful. So we then found ways to do or communicate the things that we're working on in different ways. And we did that with text, with imagery, with data, and making things a little bit more visual in general. And out of that, what started out as a 5-person WordPress blog, some social enterprise with over 300 contributors at this point has prospered over the last years, now with offices in Namibia and in Canada as well. And we do a lot of things in order to bridge those science, policy, society gaps to address some of the main issues that we have in the water, sanitation, and ocean sectors. We do a lot of storytelling, research, and analysis. We also host a lot of events in all sorts of venues and places. And we've worked over the last years with many organizations that have reached out, or we've developed rather random synergies around some of their work because, they didn't reach the target audiences that they wanted to. And now I'm just going to present a few of these projects. And for example, this is a project that we did with the United Nations Development Program on the Euphrates River basin. The Euphrates River, if you don't know, is a basin in the Middle East shared by Turkey, Syria, and Iraq. It's an incredibly controversial basin, upstream Turkey holding some of the water, Syria being in continuous disarray, and Iraq being a country massively reliable on the water that does arrive at the end of the day in their country. And the United Nations Development Program here has many initiatives to combat some of these issues and these challenges, and also to create dialogue and solutions for people. And this project here does communicate a lot of these things in a more accessible way to people. For example, what are the species that you're dealing with in the first place? How do you manage the agriculture? What are the wetlands that you should be protecting? And what are the actual examples of solutions that UNDP has implemented? And this is a project that was very successful, and now, unfortunately, because of the situation in Syria, is in a bit of a holding period. Also, just as a side note, and maybe some of you can relate to this, things can get very controversial about very random things. For example, at some point within this project, the government of Syria denied us to use the word river. So we were not able to do a platform about a river using the word river. That's how politicized and fearful the environment in some places is when you're trying to talk about some people's work. Another project that we did recently is this funky looking globe for the Global Environment Facility and their International Waters Program, because they did so much work over the last years, but they had no meaningful way or accessible way to actually present it. So we developed this globe, and we did a few interactive elements here, and processed their data and some of the videography to make things a little bit more funky. We like to refer to these things as digital cat toys, that we interact more likely with and spend some more time on, compared to endless Excel lists that a lot of these organizations maintain. We also do research projects like this one. The government of Brandenburg, Germany, is trying to understand the impacts of hydrogen or renewable energy production on the water resources. It's a notoriously water-scarce region, and doing anything with the waters is highly controversial. This project was able to mitigate a lot of the concerns. There were a few stakeholder workshops around this that helped put things a little bit into perspective for people, and do so in a digestible way, to compare it with existing users. And one of the big things that we try to emphasize is photography and visual storytelling. We do photo contests for the last couple of years with UNESCO, always aligned with the yearly theme on water. And then when we run these contests, well, we have youth prizes, but then we also put together these exhibitions. And within these exhibitions, we have special sessions for children, so they can understand the topic, they can draw little creatures like the axolotl or other things. And that, to us, is a very important work, because it may not have any meaningful effects at the very moment, but in the long run, these sort of things do make a difference. This is the current contest. And we do these sort of events with a view to changing and planting seeds that take generations to sprout. And it has gotten quite a bit of attention over the years, and was picked up in many places, and has reached many people. And we think that's very important. And the children's side of things, the educational side of things, Veronica will elaborate on a little bit, which is the letters to the sea in her part of the presentation. But I want to, quick presentation. I want to end on a bit of a personal note here. So when we suggest these things to people, most often they don't understand it very well, because they cannot relate to it. I think there's a lack in many parts of the world of having a sort of intergenerational culture of engaging with certain topics, especially in a increasingly globalized world. And a lot of the work that we do is meant to build these bridges, not just across science and policy and society, but also across languages and across generations. And a personal example for me here, and that then goes to the topic that Veronica will talk about as well, is, for example, the little fireman here in the left corner. When I was a kindergarten child, or in primary school, there's this initiative whereby on a actually concerningly regular basis, you're exposed to the local firemen. And they do like little drawing contests. Children can draw flames and cats in trees and whatnot, and that's a fun activity to do. And then you get to visit the firemen buildings and whatnot, and it's all very exciting. And it's something that, taken by itself, is completely meaningless or comparatively meaningless. But it's something that has been happening in many places where I'm from for the last 50, 60, 80 years. And the result of that is that it's something that's relatively deeply ingrained in society, and it substantially influences the sort of relevance and the preference that these sort of things take in the decision making of the local communities as well. And the same applies to pretty much everything else. When we approach schools and we tell them, hey, do you want to maybe incentivize your school children to write a letter to the local MPA or the local river or something? They often fail to see the long-term effect on that or the point in the first place. But taking a bit of a longer stance and looking at things intergenerationally, whereby this is an activity that is maintained for many years, does ultimately change the trajectory and the preference and the priorities of people when it comes to making decisions about their environment. So while these things taken individually are not necessarily meaningful, taken collectively, and that's then everyone's effort coming together, they do make a difference as to how we govern our waters or our resources as a whole, and how we then treat them in a sustainable way. And that's a lot of the work that we do. It's very long term, but it does ultimately address some of the root causes that we have when it comes to the tragedy of the commons, or generally systemic gaps around regulating behaviors or service gaps in the funding that these things receive, which is ultimately the education and the policy side of things. And on that fireman note, I'm already done with my bit, and well, 18 minutes. So yeah, now over to Q&A, and then Veronica is going to talk a little bit more about the oceans side of things. Thank you.
Great, thank you for your talk. If anyone needs to know where the Q&A box is, it's on the very bottom of your screen, and you just click on it and you can add your questions in there. Maybe I will start us off while people are typing. I have a couple questions here. I guess first one, I mean, you might have touched on it at the end there. What have some of your biggest challenges been when starting Onewater, sorry? Is it more convincing people that happen to, rather than, because I'm sure clients come to you, but what challenge do you face outside of the clients?
What challenge do you face outside of the clients? Or what was hard about this in the first place? I mean, I think it's not unique to the Onewater journey, but more generally to anything that you start from scratch without any meaningful funding. So it's very frustrating, and you need a group of people to, I guess, share the same vision, to push through and just, yeah, I mean, not give up with things. It does continue to be challenging to this very day because, of course, a lot of the work that's being done is voluntary work. We have over 200 translators that volunteer their time to this to translate a lot of the content into their native languages. We have a lot of volunteer contributors that share their photography or do their writing and whatnot through Onewater. But doing this by yourself is incredibly sad and frustrating and overwhelming. But it helps to gather a group of people that works towards something together and does so in a constructive way. It's challenging to fundraise for these sort of things. But it is increasingly recognized. So we've seen over the last years also more and more of a push within larger science communication projects, like research projects, EU funding, where these sort of things are mandatory. Unfortunately, it's very often still done very poorly. But it's a step in the right direction.
Okay, thank you for that answer. That was really good. We do have a question now. Um, we have it from Frank, and he wants to know how can we better present, even to the science community, the connection between freshwater and marine waters, and especially how biodiversity depends on the one water concept.
Yeah, very good question. So I think we've come a long way. I've been involved in the Source to Sea platform of the actually, because this is more of an oceans crowd, right? How many of you, again, we can't really interact, but is anyone aware of the Source to Sea platform?
You can just raise your hand at the bottom,
Yeah.
the raise the hand button if you want, if you're aware of it. I think
Yeah,
that answers your question.
so I think there's a lot of efforts within the different bubbles, and I'm also not seeing any meaningful way to bridge those bubbles on either side, I have to say. And we've been trying to push that conversation within the Source to Sea platform for many years now, and slowly, very slowly, but there's still a big disconnect. It's how to do that. I think is everyone's job. And we've tried to also integrate some of these things into the work that we do and the projects that we run, but we do encounter the funding barriers, even when we have a project and we're like, hey, we're gonna do a project on the Euphrates, let's also like talk about, the delta and the impact on the fisheries and whatnot. It's like, no, that's not our mandate. That's not what we do. So we can't fund it. So it's a bit of a systemic issue as well. And yeah, worth having the conversations.
Um, I think that I agree with you a lot with that, especially with the funding and then getting the different groups to coming together and seeing the value in one project and how it can help. I want to, well, I'm waiting if there's any other questions. I just want to loop back. You answered this actually a little bit with your volunteer troop of 200 translators. It's quite impressive. Do you see any difference in campaign impacts between the countries? Say you're writing in everything in English. If you have, say, a UK audience versus a Canadian audience, do you see a difference, a cultural difference in how they accept or react to campaigns?
Hmm. I would say that there's a much nicer pickup in a more Latin culture when it comes to these sort of things. At least from my perspective, maybe Vado, you have a different one. There's always been positive feedback, whereby I feel that it's a lot less valued, maybe more in Central Europe. That's my initial impression. Uh, yeah, not sure I have a good answer to this question.
No, that is a
But
very good
also
answer.
what I've noticed, and I mean no offense to the Canadian audience here or the North American one, conversations do unnecessarily get sidetracked by certain certain concerns about who could take possibly offense in certain things, and that is often besides the point, in my opinion. Um, yeah, it's a cultural thing.
Yeah, I think you have a good answer there. I think it loops back a lot to the cultural history in the area and cultural identity, depending on the country. We have one more minute of questions if anybody wants to. Oh, here we have one right now. From Calvin, have you tried to utilize the nutrient values contributed through freshwater runoff and how the LCA goes full circle from ocean back to freshwater?
Can you repeat that? It was a bit
Yeah.
of a
I can
hard
also, do
one.
you want to read it too? Because I can copy it
Oh,
and put it in the chat. Maybe that would be
oh
helpful
yeah,
for you.
sure.
Yeah, let's do
It's
that.
there in the Q&A.
You have,
Okay.
yeah,
If you
perfect.
try to utilize the nutrient values contributed to freshwater runoff and how the LCA goes from ocean back to freshwater. No, we have not. But I'm sure I would imagine someone has. So yeah, no. It's a big issue, the land use change and related nutrient runoff. As a matter of fact, we're preparing a Interac application for a Alpine space program to do something along these lines, identifying where areas need to be restored in order to manage nutrient runoff better. to have healthier wetland and river ecosystems. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to just jump in there. We are closing in on your session. So if you have any last thoughts before we pass it on to Veronica, and if anybody wants to contact Christian, otherwise you can reach him through LinkedIn or the website, which has been put in the chat before.
Yeah, I'll put a few more bullet points to some of the examples I shared in the chat. And yeah, thanks, Andrea, for convening, and thanks everyone for the attendance.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Veronica, we will switch over to you when you are ready.
Yeah. So, do you see properly?
Yes, we do see it.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. I really enjoyed the presentation of Chris. And within Onewater, we have our own initiative that we run. It's focused on oceans, and it's called Somos Océanos. In English, We Are Oceans. And this is a project that I started when I was doing my PhD in Vancouver. Now I'm done with it, and I'm a postdoc at the University of Santiago de Compostela. And the director of all the projects of oceans in Onewater, as before Andrea said. But that's why it's a bit special for me, this project, because started there and from zero, and it's endorsed by Marine Life 2030. So what is Somos Océanos, or SOS? That's the acronym that we will use from now on. It assesses management and conservation efforts, as well as the socio-ecological relationships in coastal areas. It explores the people in between and the ways to start a conversation for a better management of marine protected areas. And it specifically targets paper MPAs, or paper parks. And how do we choose those paper parks? It's following a scientific methodology that I developed with Daniel Polly that is called the Paper Park Index. How I see paper parks is a bit like this, like a square that sometimes we put in the ocean, and we want to establish there because we have sometimes to reach certain conservation targets, and then it's only on the paper, but it doesn't really work in reality. And it's a pity. Oops, it's a pity because a lot of MPAs are now paper parks, and they cause like a bit of a false sense of what is conserved in reality. So how we can maybe transform these areas? I thought, okay, let's use maybe science communication. And this can be used in different ways, as we saw in the presentation of Chris. But when we communicate science, is to know also who is your public. And sometimes that is hard to know, because the public could be very diverse. We talk with policy making, with youth, with scientists, with founders, and they all want different things, right? On top of that, we have certain issues, like, for example, the average attention, which I don't believe is 9 seconds. I'm a bit more positive than that. I think it's longer. But one of the ways to hold attention is through videos. And that's what also Somos Océanos uses. They use videos to communicate what are the issues in those paper parks. The average length watch of a single internet video usually is around 2.7 minutes. And then when you ask to senior executives, they will rather watch a video than read a text. So it's a format that, well, is better consumed in every space. So I was thinking, okay, what we can do to communicate our science, but also to reach to different public. And this is how it started a bit Somos Océanos. And I want to now bring you to another, let's say, theater play in which we talk about one of the work of Somos Océanos and how it started. So once upon a time, there was this marine protected area in the north of Patagonia, Golfo de San Matias, and a bit more in San Antonio. It took some of us like 42 hours to reach there from Madrid to San Antonio. So a long way. And it was a place that, of course, it had a lot of beautiful different ecosystems. They don't relate with the pictures, just as a disclosure, but it also suffered from a lot of environmental issues, like, for example, pollution. There was ship transport, and of course, overfishing. Um, and there is also people living there, no? Different faces. We have the local artisanal fishers that they were there for ages, the industrial fishers, the national, local, regional governments, the scientists, as we see in the center of the picture, and then journalists also. So what can we do to bring all these people together and to lose this feeling of being scared to each other, to not talk with each other, to like, I don't understand what the other person is saying, or we are just scared of sharing what are our opinions, right? So the idea was to do several interviews with these people, record them, trying to understand what was the issue for them, why the MPA or the paper park was not working, and what is, in their opinion, the solution. How can we better do? And when we record different actors and then we produce a video, as we did in this case, and share with them, they will feel more willing to participate later on in decision-making processes because they know what the neighbor thinks, they know what the mayor says, and they are less scared to participate. So that's the ultimate goal. Some of the comments that we receive, and I like to highlight, is like, not everyone participates in decision making. They were complaining about that a lot. We don't conserve the MPA together, or people also need to collaborate. We can imagine that the local government was saying that, for example. Here, of course, we went over through a lot of material that we had to watch to lead to a product that it just not only communicated for one type of factors, but to all of them. And then the main objective for me is to share with the community, because the video is done from them, like from their perspectives, but with the idea that they all watch it. It's not that I do it and I bring it to some festivals and win some awards. The idea is that they watch it and then they feel more empowered. So that comes with a whole other story in which you have to go to the local TV, the local radio. You do a lot of advertisement, and this takes a lot of time and energy also, but it's, I will say, one of the most important parts of the project. If you do it and then you don't share with them, we will end up in that helicopter science that we want to avoid, correct? So this is a very important task. After this, after we shared the documentary and we had some roundtables afterwards, there were some changes in the area, and I'm very happy to share these articles or headlines in which they were actually taking a bit of a better look into the discharge of this fabric that we can see here, that it was actually within the border of the MPA. So I'm very proud of that. Of course, I'm also very proud of winning some award winners, awards in some film festivals, but with this, it was the first movie with Argentina, and also in the second one with Mexico. But again, I want to highlight that for me, the most important part is when you share with people and then they can do something different for the community. And we can have stronger communities. We have governance changes and more participation and trust. So that's kind of the ultimate goal of the project. And some of them were reached in Argentina and also in Mexico, where we did the second part of the project. But unfortunately, this is not a case that just happens in Patagonia or in Mexico. Paper parks are everywhere, and I wish that I could say it was just only there, but no. So this is the end of the story of that project. But to finalize with some conclusions, I want to say that our work or our research, I think personally it will work and it will bring the results that we are looking for if we can communicate it in a way that is relatable to everyone, if we say it in a novel way, if it's novel, if it holds the tension, and if it's fluent. And if we have those four components, I think that we can steer desire and arm for action. I'm positive in that regard. With that, I want to highlight again a bit the Letters to the Sea initiative, which we have within Somos Océanos. This is an initiative in which children from and youth from 3 to 22 years old, they send out letters to the sea. They write to the ocean, expressing what they like about the ocean, the challenges where they live, and what are the wishes for the future. And the idea is that they write that, and then we take those letters to some conferences. For example, we will be in the One Ocean Science Congress and at UNOC with the letters. So leaders, researchers, or decision makers can feel and see and explore what the youth around the world has to say about the ocean. And with that, I would like to finish with one of the letters from Guadalajara, the place where I'm from. And this is one from Triana. She is 9 years old, and she says, excuse me, every summer I visit you with my family. I love your salty waters, your soothing waves, and your sand for building castles. I also enjoy diving into you while watching the little fish that nibble on my feet. But I don't like it when I see trash in your waters every time I swim. What makes me sad? My family and I will continue to take care of you as you deserve. To prevent it from happening, we will convince people not to litter you anymore. So I hope that with this message, we are also convinced that we need to bring spaces where youth can explain themselves, and where we just communicate to everyone equally. So yeah, thank you very much. This is some of the people that help in the documentary in Argentina, and I'm open for the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you for that really great talk. It's fascinating, all the work that you've done,
Thank
and
you.
also seeing like the outcomes of it, and it's inspiring as well. Just while we wait for some questions, do you have maybe like a video example you want to show us or something that might, I mean, get some more questions rolling in?
Okay. Let me share a bit of a small video. Sorry, I just learned this some minutes ago. Okay, here it is. I hope you can see the full screen. Do you see it?
Sorry, I muted myself. Yes, we see it's full screen.
Okay, I go.
What does the ocean mean to you?
El mar da sentido a la vida.
Para mí el mar es vida.
El mar representa vida.
El mar es mi vida.
Es fuente de vida.
Es mi vida.
Mi vida.
It's who I am.
Es algo muy respetuoso.
Libertad, felicidad.
futuro, prosperidad.
El mar ha sido un medio para conectar con mi pasión, que es crear espacios para los niños, niñas y adolescentes.
Está entre el misterioso y algo que me genera muchísimas emociones.
Ha sido un refugio para mí, ha sido mi mayor maestro.
Es algo que nos representa, y no solo a mí, sino que nos representa a toda la sociedad, porque es algo que nos rodea.
Es nuestra madre, es un sitio de inspiración. Si no lo cuidamos, pues nos estamos haciendo daño a nosotros mismos. Sin el mar, pues no hay vida.
A nivel emocional es un escape, es paz, es sanación y también es oxígeno, es reproducción de vida.
Además de que es una fuente de alimento, también es una fuente de tranquilidad, también es una fuente de trabajo.
El mar representa vida, sustentable, vida en el que el planeta podemos vivir de manera orgánica con el mar.
Mi pasión, mi disfrute, mi amor, mi calma, mi tormenta.
I'm one of those people that knows that if we destroy the oceans, we've destroyed mankind. Yeah, we came from the ocean, and if we screw that up, we're all going away.
En cuestión personal, tú te vas al mar y es una tranquilidad, una paz. Y en cuestión familiar, en cuestión económica, pues es el que me da el sustento para mí y para mi familia. Y hay que estar agradecidos con él y cuidarlo.
Para mí el mar es definitivamente mi infancia y mi vida adulta. También es el área que me da la oportunidad de conectar con gente que me ha cambiado la vida. Es el agua que me lleva a conocer y trabajar para las comunidades.
Such an unknown for me. It's becoming less of an intimidating environment to be in, and I really look forward to being more comfortable in the sea.
Es un lugar hermoso y necesario para la gente que vive en otras partes que no tiene mar. Cuando viene para acá, parecen niños felices cuando conocen el mar. Fuente de alimentación para muchas familias y para muchas personas.
Para mí es el ecosistema más importante del planeta. Nos ofrece muchas cosas para recrearnos, para alimentarnos. Es el controlador del clima y debemos estar más preocupados e involucrados en su conservación porque se contamina mucho.
El mar es muy, muy importante.
Thank you for showing us that.
No worries. I'm not. I want to know if now I can stop sharing. No.
Yes, go for it. And we have a question, and I know I shouldn't pick favorites, but this might be my favorite question so far today. Would you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have the camera.
Oh, I don't have the camera. That's okay. I can still talk.
Okay.
Would you consider having a storyteller presenter? In Alaska, we use storytellers that captivate youth to elders in most communities with increased direct involvement. And I actually have a follow-up question to this. I don't understand exactly what a storyteller presenter is, but I think I'm going to like it. So if you would want to answer the first question, would you consider having a storyteller presenter? And then maybe we can go from there.
Well, I will always consider having storytellers. I mean, I think that storytellers are very important for transmitting information and also literacy to different generations. So yes, I will consider it. I don't know if you mean like in a way of collaborating also, or in which way, Calvin, you are asking this question. I mean, for me, I'm always open to storytellers of any part of the world, but yes, if you can elaborate a bit more.
Calvin, maybe you can add a comment either into the Q&A to follow up on your question and let us know a little bit more about storyteller presenters.
Okay.
We can wait and give some time for that. Well, while waiting for Calvin's input there. Okay, sorry, Calvin's input. I just want to circle back to the letters to the sea. Can any child do this, or do they have to be contacted first, or what's the?
Yeah, so thank you for your question. This is an initiative that we are running in general, so anyone could send it. Usually, what we are trying to do is to partner with schools or educational centers, that they are dealing more with youth. So when we reach to them, we kind of have higher chances to have more letters, right? And they are also going to be able to communicate better the activity of writing the letter. So in general, this is also for everyone here. If you know about someone like that works with the community, works with children and youth, and you are interested in running the initiative or the activity, yes, please just contact me. I will be very happy to send you all the information. Our objective is to reach 1 million letters by the UNOC. But the UNOC is almost tomorrow. It's in June, it's almost there. And we are not close to 1 million, but we have a lot others, not 1 million, but still enough to show there. So yes, please contact me and my email, and we will be able to send you all the information. Even for schools, we developed like a kind of class routine that it can be done together with the letters activity. So the teachers have a bit more of content, and they are better prepared for this ocean literacy activity. So yes, please open for anyone or any contacts that you might have.
I'm going to send you an email after exactly about this. Yeah. And I really like how you have this developed to help the teachers, because that is one of the things that teachers want to do it. They maybe don't have the literacy themselves to be able to pass it on.
Yeah, that's one of the issues. Like, if I may add, is that a lot of initiatives that they are like with these words of, okay, ocean literacy, it's so important. Yes, it is important, but we need to give certain tools to the people that can do these ocean literacy activities, right? Like, okay, it's just like, okay, we need it, but how? And I think it's important to consider that we need to bring certain tools that are flexible, because it might not work for every school in the world, as there are different communities, and yeah, it's different. But in that regard, I want to add that also for the classes, it's really interesting the answers that the children could receive. So they write a letter, but then they could receive an answer. So it's like, yeah, I wrote something, I did something, and someone responded. And then it's like, oh, there's this connection between you being, I don't know, in a small village in the center of Spain, and someone else in, I don't know, in Indonesia or in Galapagos Islands that is so far from where you are. And I think it creates this intergenerational connection and also regional connection. So it's very beautiful.
It does sound really beautiful. We have two comments in the Q&A, one from Frank, and then Calvin has given us some information on the storytellers. So I'm going to return to Frank's question after. Are you able to see the responses in the Q&A? I'll read it out for other people as well.
I see the one of Frank here, yeah.
Okay, so from Calvin, storytellers have a TEDx talk persona that presents information and topics in general that captivate the audience. We have used traditional storytelling to teach history and cultural roots. Oh, that's amazing. And in college have found that the professors and guest speakers with a storytelling approach have 100% attention of classes with more questions with interest.
Nice.
That sounds really fascinating. Yes. Thank you for educating us on that. And then Frank, your question. Thank you, Veronica. Really important work. Part of our work here today at MBON is networking. Have you by chance made contact with protectedseas.net? They document ocean jurisdictions, including MPAs and how effective they are, the laws and regulations. It may be good to pair the formal policy frameworks they archive with local impressions from local communities, users, children. Not just you, but all working on this type of outreach. Oh, fantastic question.
Yeah, I know about protected seas from long time. Actually, when they started, they reached to me because they knew about the work when I was already at the University of British Columbia. So we tried to create this agreement and everything. But of course, I was just a PhD student, and it didn't work because I didn't have the capacity to include everything and put it in the format that they needed and everything. And I just recently saw that they finally made an agreement between the Sea Around Us, which was the research group in Vancouver, in which I was working on, and them and protected seas. So at the end, something really materialized between these two groups, the Sea Around Us and the protected seas. But yeah, you're right. I think I should push and try to put that together with the database because it could be very important. But to do that, I will also need a bigger team. For a bigger team, I will need funding. So this is something that I'm struggling right now, and we are looking for long-term funding that can sustain the project, and then we can grow. So that will be needed.
We
Okay.
are coming up to the end. We are in our last 8 minutes here. So if anyone has questions, feel free to jump into the Q&A and put them in there. While we're waiting, I actually have a question. This is more opinion. I don't think you have any data on this, but there was one of the sayings you collected. Not everyone participates in decision making. How much how much do you think this is by choice, and how much is by design?
Yeah, I know. I also wonder about this. Um, I know that, for example, in the MPA in Argentina, where I was, um, it's hard to believe. It's like, for example, the NGOs there and the NGO that is running like the management plan and it ran all the efforts for protecting that MPA. They made sure that they invited the fishers, for example, and they sent everything they could. They advertised the meetings in the newspaper, on the radio, everything. And still, the fishers didn't go to the meetings. So they were at the end almost not part of the management plan decisions, but because they didn't go. Then if we ask to the fishers, maybe they will tell me, well, it's que we didn't know. No one told us. It's hard for me to believe one side or the other. It's true that in some cases, those efforts don't even exist, right? They don't even put it on the radio or on the newspaper, and then they just put it in a small page within the government that you have 1 week to send your opinions about certain management plan that no one can read. That happens, and then they tell you that yeah, it was open for the public and the citizens, but seriously, who will find that? It's hard to find, and those things count later on as yeah, we open it for the public and citizens. I think it should be better communicated, definitely, so no one could say hey, no one told me that there was this meeting. So yeah, I think we should put a lot more effort on communicating those meetings, those opportunities to express our opinion. So at the end, we don't have those kind of comments.
And I have one final question if nobody else has one right now. What are your future plans for the next film? Do you have some ideas lined up, or?
Well, I always have ideas, too many ideas. I recently got a Marie Curie on Monday.
Congratulations. Sorry to
Thank
interrupt
you.
you, but that deserves congratulations.
Yes, so I will start this project that I just show here on a more European level to map the paper parks in Europe, and then running certain documentaries within paper parks in Europe. And that's gonna start probably in a year. So that's kind of one of my plans. And then what I would love to do here also with this project is to engage with other organizations or foundations to grow the scope of assessment of marine protected areas and trying to better understand other regions. Because I think I imagine a future where I have a lot of documentaries, and I imagine a future in which most of them will have similar challenges. And the core message is that, yeah, we want a better place, but we have to work better together. And I think it doesn't matter if I do the documentary in Mexico or Indonesia or in Galapagos. At the end, I think the messages will be very similar. And I think I'm really looking for having those kind of comparisons and show to everyone that we actually share the similar challenges in that way.
I really hope that you were able to get those documentaries out, because I agree with you on all of that. And as what we've seen now, the little snippets are quite beautiful. So yeah, we are rounding up to the hour here. So if there's any last questions, people can get them in, and if not, you can contact our presenters either through their websites or LinkedIn. Perfect. Thank you for putting your email right there.
Yeah, so I put it there, and I also wanted to add, if any of you have a MPA or a place where you think this kind of work will be interesting for the community or for your project, just contact me and we can see if we can develop something together.
Excellent. That is really great. Okay, well, I just want to thank everybody for attending, and I especially want to thank our presenters and the organizers for this.
Thank you, all of you also, for inviting me. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the session.
Thanks, Joanna. Thanks for all your patience. See you soon, I think, in France, maybe.